Då har ni någon minut innan utsatt tid här, 59 står det på min klocka, så drar vi igång vårt samtal som vi ska ha idag med Tony Berry som är ordförande för FIDIC. Jag heter Magnus Hög och är ju förbundsdirektör som ni kanske vet på Innovationsföretagen, en bransch- och arbetsgivarorganisation för arkitekt- och ingenjörsföretag i den kunskapsintensiva delen av näringslivet. Och vi kör de här samtalen på Facebook någon gång i månaden för att fånga upp personer vi vill lyssna på som förklarar lite grann vår omgivning men också som kanske ger oss lite inspel till vårt arbete. Så att jag är glad för att vi har runnit med en lång rad politiker och myndighetspersoner och ja, det är en lite blandad kompott av folk som alla har haft sitt speciella bidrag till de här samtalen. Och idag har vi alltså med oss FIDIC som är, där vi är medlemmar. Jag ska strax be Tony berätta om den organisationen. Vi kör ju live på Facebook, så vill ni komma med frågor under resans gång så vi kör en halvtimme, klart 15:30. Så gör gärna det, annars så kommer det här också finnas kvar att titta på i efterhand. So with that, and we'll have this conversation in English, I'll say hi to Tony Berry, that is on the other side of the world, right?
Yes, hello.
Hi, you are in Melbourne, or at least in Australia, right?
Melbourne, Australia, yes.
Melbourne. So welcome to this chat for 30 minutes, and we'll try to dig into both a bit quickly about yourself, but also the role of FIDIC and the global perspectives of the industry that we're in. But first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and who you are.
I'm a civil engineer, specialised over many years in geotechnical projects and a little bit of structures, and mainly in the transport sector, but not exclusively. Studied at University of Sydney and was brought up in Sydney. Moved down here to Melbourne in 2007 and have been really involved in management of company Aurecon since I was about, well, maybe we'll just say a little over 30, and enjoyed really the major project world as it is in Australia. I've worked in Africa, I've worked in Asia, and obviously Australasia as well.
How do you spend your time? Are you still active in projects or in the company, or have you sort of?
I think I've long surrendered my role in projects directly, but certainly still acting as a mentor for various people, still involved with the consulting industry in Australia. But the reality is most of my time is spent on FIDIC work, as well as some non-executive director roles that I have in other companies.
So let's get to FIDIC, which is the sort of the platform that you and I have met previously, and that yes. We are members. What is FIDIC for the people that might not know that?
Well, it's the International Federation of Consulting Engineers. That's what it is. Consulting engineers usually work in firms of some sort or companies, and those companies are members of all these national associations. And in Australia, I just mentioned Consult Australia and your association in Sweden. So those are the national members of FIDIC, and FIDIC spends its time and a lot of energy trying to achieve a whole series of objectives, from leading the profession, looking after its image, trying to improve its capacity, and dealing with some pretty substantive issues that we face in operating consulting businesses throughout the world.
And it's fair to say that contracts is one of the more important issues that FIDIC is working on, right?
Yes, and it has been for many, many years. And it's the oldest suite, I think, of international standard contracts, and it'll continue to develop and evolve. It's a very important vehicle for the delivery of infrastructure and building projects, industrial projects throughout the world. And in that sense, it requires continual renovation and development. And there's a wonderful group of volunteers who commit to that work and put in tremendous amount of time to create what is a really important product. The agreements, contracts are used very heavily by the multilateral banks, by the UN, and now in many countries of the world as well.
I think that for many people that at least work internationally, I think the FIDIC is most well known for its contracts, even though it's not that used in Sweden. Do you know, is it especially countries or regions that is more used to working with the FIDIC contracts, and do you see more of a global scale going forward for that?
Yeah, yes, I do. There is more of a drive in that direction. I think it's fair to say that those countries who had very sophisticated legal systems and in fact had their own national standard contracts have stuck with those and continued with them. But many countries didn't have a standard contract of their own and have effectively adopted FIDIC as that national standard. Now, it's still, in a sense, far more useful and used in international contracts, but is certainly gaining traction in many countries of the world. And I think the translations have helped. There are a lot of official translations we do now, including into Chinese, for example, and that has made the contracts much more accessible in many countries. But if you look at the list of translations done by the local associations, it is a massive list, and that's made them much more accessible in many, many countries of the world.
It's not in Swedish yet, though, so that might be for future development. You mentioned that you are sort of an association for consulting engineers and the firms. How do you, is that an issue or a problem that you sort of both view the individual and its expertise together with the companies? Do you think that is an issue?
We're primarily the business association, and that's our primary interest. And we are trying to address the issues that are of importance to the businesses. And that, that ranges from market conditions, addressing corruption issues, addressing quality issues, sustainability, and lots of other matters which presented themselves as difficult for the construction industry, consulting engineering industry. The issues around risk and liability, so they're largely the business issues. Having said that, the FIDIC body of knowledge, as we call it, has a large amount of documentation and material in it to help develop individuals. And we also have credentialing systems now for credentialing individuals in the use of the FIDIC body of knowledge. So, but it's all about the businesses.
And talking about the businesses, I guess it's a global trend, and we see that very obviously in Sweden, where companies are more diverse, have more expertise in new areas. I mean, the architects meets the engineers, and you also see other areas of knowledge that is sort of within one body, one organization. How do you view that? Is that something that also will challenge or develop FIDIC going forward?
Well, I think it's developed FIDIC already. There are many, many companies that I would describe as made up of the built environment professionals, and there's many of them. And the company I work for, we had 37 professions in the company that were not engineering, and it's the need of today. If you look from the planning aspects, you look at the investment aspects, the design aspects. You have to have people who, if you like, are much more well-rounded and broadly have a broad base of skills to be able to deliver infrastructure projects. So the name consulting engineering is historical in that sense, because the companies are truly multidisciplinary, and they must be to deliver the projects that we deal with today.
Talking with someone from Australia, I think it's, at least from my perspective in Sweden, we have a view that you handled the pandemic differently than we did. And so the question would be, do you think that, how has the pandemic affected the industry in general? Has it been a big problem, or as it sort of, what is the status of the industry given the changes that we've been through the last 18 months?
In globally or in Australia?
I would say globally, but I guess that also with the differences around the world, I guess.
Well, yes. So in many economies, there's tremendous internet infrastructure. There's very systematic approaches to delivery of projects, well understood. There's a level of technological capability which is very substantial. And many of those countries, in fact, what's happened is the costs that consulting engineers have had to incur have reduced. So their productivity may have also dropped off a little, but the reality is that many of them have made higher profits than they might have expected through the COVID situation. There's no doubt, however, that in many countries of the world, the impact has been very dramatic and drastic. We have many colleagues who've lost their lives to COVID. We have many companies that have lost their businesses to COVID. So in some of the less sophisticated economies, cash flow has become a very, very serious issue. Smaller companies which do not have the relationships with banking facilities and so forth that they might have required to get them through have struggled. So there's a great range of stories and experiences which have occurred under the COVID experience, unfortunately. And, it's only time is going to tell how that pans out. It has caused many governments to look to stimulate activity in the sector. And it's also caused many governments to put in place support measures, mainly focused at individuals and retaining their employment. And so there have been some very, very good initiatives around the world which have helped the industry, no question of that. But there have also been some very unfortunate situations develop. And it would be an unusual person who's working in FIDIC who doesn't know somebody who's lost their lives through it. But it'd be unusual.
And it's good to remember that, and I totally agree that is where you need to start. But going towards the market conditions, I guess the need for new infrastructure and the water supplies, energy, and also roads and railroads, that has not changed. I guess we still need. There's so many things to do, so the need for our services has not been diminished, right?
No, I don't think the need for the services has diminished at all. I think it's changing. It's going to change a little bit because there's no doubt hybrid working models, as they're now called, with a larger number of people able to work from home in some of the more advanced communities, has changed the transport need a little. And that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But the underlying need for infrastructure longer term has not changed. And the need, as we are all dealing with at the moment, to move to something close to net zero very quickly, in fact, will create work and requires a greater level of attention, expertise and capability to deliver that different future that we're looking for. So I don't see any reduction, and all the predictions I've seen indicate very substantial ongoing growth in the industry.
The pandemic has obviously been sort of very handled nationally differently, and we've seen sort of that the globalization trend maybe had sort of just stopped for a while, and we know that this industry also is rather nationally organized. Do you think that what do you think about the globalization of this industry and the services that we deliver? We know that there is a bunch of huge companies that is really multinational, but we also see that regulation in our field is rather regional or national. Do you see that will sort of take off going forward to be more global perspectives on the industry?
Well, certainly the bigger companies, and even when I say bigger companies, I'm talking about anybody that's operating in, say, 5 to 10 countries or more. They move work around, and certainly the company I works with have been moving work around for 20 years. So we've had work done in Africa, we've had work done in Asia, different places to be delivered actually in Australia. So that's been that resource sharing right across these larger groups has been a very common feature of the last 20 years. And I think that's only going to continue. Why is that? Well, largely, we are still not producing enough engineers in this world to do what we aspire to do. And that skill shortage is still quite substantial. And it's certainly in this country and in a number of advanced economies kept the incomes of engineers, consulting engineers at quite a high level relative to other professionals. So the demand is growing. In my view, the supply is not yet coming through. There is a far greater need to address this problem at school level with dealing with science, technology, engineering and maths, STEM as it's known, and really promoting that, because we are well under-resourced in terms of what we need to deliver the infrastructure that's planned for the next 30 years.
We'll come back to the climate change in a minute, but I'll just wanted to give you or our viewers a little bit glimpse of your the name of the man behind the name here. So I'll just give you a few choices between pick between these. Are you a PC guy or a Mac guy?
I'm a Mac guy.
You're a Mac guy, okay.
I'm a Mac guy.
And also
I'm a photographer.
I'll use your Mac for that. Perfect. Well, how do you would you choose social media before the newspaper or the other way around?
Social media before the newspaper.
So you're sort of active on Facebook or Twitter or
LinkedIn. I'm very much been on LinkedIn for years. Yeah.
Would you see yourself more as a businessman or an engineer?
A businessman.
Are you missing the engineering part of your life?
No, because I was intensely involved in it for so many years.
Okay. If you were picked between, if you would like to view us looking for new things, would you go more for architecture or IT?
IT.
And why is that?
I did a degree in computer science and I never used it. I did use it. I wrote a lot of engineering software in my early years, but I've always loved the challenge of today you would say writing apps and developing apps is something that I did for many years. And I actually went to the wake of one of my pieces of software after 26 years. It got decommissioned. So I'd love to get back to that. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Good for you. If you were to pick between Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, which one would you choose?
Musk, yes.
Why is that?
I like the aggression, I'll call it that, it's probably the wrong word, but the intensity with which he goes after innovation. It's something I think actually he's provoked others who weren't so aggressive in being so innovative. But to me, that's a great quality, and I've always admired and sought to be an innovator myself. So it's an easy choice.
And finally, would you go for summer vacation or winter vacation, if you were to choose?
That's a very tough question. I'm an Australian, so summer vacation is something I've lived with all my life. Yep. We're on summer vacation a lot of our lives over here, but I love the Arctic and the Antarctic, and that's not quite a winter vacation, but it's a summer vacation in a very cold place.
And now we'll get into the questions of climate change. When I saw this picture of you, when we sort of had a discussion just a few days ago, I saw the picture behind you, and I suggested Greenland, but it's not, right?
No, it's halfway. Well, it's between Greenland and Canada. It's taken at 80 degrees north.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Sorry, but you also had visited Antarctica just recently, right?
Correct. Yes, 2020, just the beginning of 2020.
Does it look like this, like the picture behind you?
No, Antarctica is much more. It's a continent. It's got mountains. It's got tremendous peaks, and they just rise up out of the ocean and are absolutely stunning. I've driven past, sailed past massive sheets of ice, which you can see at the moment one of the US bases coming out of the side of that's taller than the top mast of the ship. Wow. The scale of it is quite extraordinary. I did not see the same not quite the same in the Arctic. It is different.
What is your personal perspective on so the role that you might have or we might have, and coming to the industry later? But I mean, how much is the climate change is affecting sort of your mindset on a daily basis?
Well, it's in my mind on a daily basis. I write a lot about it. We have chat facilities with our newspapers here. So I think I take personally the responsibility to explain the mechanism of climate change to people around me. There's an awful lot of people who have views about it, but don't actually understand the mechanism or why the science appears to be so complicated and challenged and so forth. So I spend a lot of time, the recent IPCC report has given me a whole lot of reason to read again and to understand. But to me, it's engineers are, if you like, the connection between the scientists and people. And we are the applied scientists, if you like, of buildings and infrastructure. And so for us to be able to explain why it is the way it is, what we're expecting to happen, why resilience and adaptation are going to be important, understanding and explaining again what happens with thermal coal power generation, for example, what happens with what the difference is with hydrogen, all of these things, and knowing these things and being able to explain them to people. I think we have a phenomenal responsibility as a communicator.
Do you think that we
I take that on?
Do you think that we in general, and I know that you cannot sort of overview everything that's happening, but talking about the general perspective from you, that we as engineers are doing a good job in sort of telling that story and explaining what we can do as engineers? Or do we have more to do?
More to do. And it's okay to have more to do. I think for a long time, engineers saw it as a technical exercise. So we've gone down the path of making sure we have Green Star rated buildings and so forth, and providing, if you like, the solutions to the problems, as engineers want to do, and have done very well at it. So we shouldn't step away from that. We still have that responsibility, as do architects, as do many of the other professions we deal with. But I think we are now in a situation where, in many countries, the tension, if I can call it, between the public discourse and the science, that tension is really something engineers now need to step into. And I think, I might be wrong, but I think society trusts us to deliver things safely and seriously, and we're a pretty diligent sort of lot. And I think our credibility is important here to add to the story and to make sure that we communicate effectively, whether it's advocacy with the authorities, whether it's discussions in public arenas and so forth. I do think it's time we stepped in.
How do you view FIDIC's role in this discussion?
Well, it's really important in my view that we step up, and next Tuesday, we have a discussion about a climate charter, so-called, that FIDIC has developed. So, we do see this as a leadership issue. If you're going to lead the industry, you have to take the industry where it needs to go. And that's not to say that we, are telling the industry exactly what they've got to do. They've got to work it out in each country, in each place. It's got to be relevant to their circumstances. But it is important that we take our part in this exercise and really look to help people understand. So, what is embodied energy? What is the carbon emissions that we generate in manufacturing or constructing a piece of infrastructure or a building? What are the operational carbon, if I can call it that, that's generated in usage of a facility? These things need to be understood. We, in time, need to develop much more sophisticated models than we have today to deal particularly with the operational side of these facilities, and transport is a classic area where that's required, so that we can seriously contribute to reducing carbon emissions. It's not a simple story. It is going to require tremendous innovation. And if you think about those of us in the developed world who've enjoyed a great quality of life for so long, we have built wealth, we have enjoyed that quality of life built on a number of the things that contributed to the carbon problem we have today. So we are in a position of some responsibility where we need to step up, and if that means we take a little bit of a step backwards in economic growth for a while, or so be it. My personal belief is that the economic growth will not suffer. In fact, I think it'll accelerate. and everything I read suggests it will accelerate. So, people feeling threatened, whether it's job losses in particular industries or what it is, we need to be able to reassure them that actually there will be opportunities out of this that are really quite exciting and will enable them to live a very good quality of life going forward.
And I really, this corresponds well to the feeling I have in Sweden, where we really have this trust and the expertise, and maybe just need to step up and be more to tell the story about what we can do. I'd like to spend a few minutes also talking about, you mentioned innovation, I think especially true now when it comes to the climate change issues, but sort of our relationship to or how we are affected by the digitalization of the industry, all the tools that we might use for design, but also data models and big data and all that. Do you think that is, how do you view this? I guess there's mixed feelings sometimes. It's disrupting our industry, but also makes potential new opportunities. What is your sort of the starting point from you, given this issue?
Well, I see it as an exciting opportunity. I go back to 1986. I wrote a piece of software that modeled the surfaces of 3D structures, and it took forever to run. But that was an extremely exciting little event when that occurred. But to me, technology offers us opportunity, and there are some points where there's no doubt social media in some circumstances is threatening various things we hold dear, and we have to be careful about some aspects of technology. But in engineering, that's not the case. And the idea that you can build a digital twin of a facility, you can effectively model that twin, you can test it in operation, you can in fact do lots and lots of scenarios, which we used to take a very long time to do. You can now do them extremely quickly to really evaluate what your options are and which are the good options and which are not. And I think this is the thing that's our work is not going to be taken away by technology. It's actually going to be increased, and we are going to have greater opportunity because society is looking for better and better solutions all the time. We won't necessarily find them the first one we look at. We'll have to look at 200. So to understand the 200, which of the 200 is a good one, is going to take a lot of scenario testing. It's going to take a lot of big data to be able to model and test it against. And to me, that's just all opportunity. I don't feel challenged by it at all, and I've always embraced it. I think enthusiastically. Some people would say it's sometimes better to come or be second on the technology bus, not trying to be out the front. But I actually think there's a lot of advantage to being out the front and learning very, very quickly.
I guess one or two would say that we are a conservative industry. Do you think that that's true, or do you think that we need to change that in that case?
I think we are conservative by mindset, and there are companies, quite a few companies, that are breaking that mold. I know the company I work for, Aurecon, has well and truly broken that mold. And I think if you start to think about how you can be different and you invite people, and this is why I like diversity and inclusiveness, is if you invite people who think differently into your space, you end up with getting different ideas you would not have got from your traditionalists. Now, you still might need the traditional brain to comment on those innovative ideas and so forth, but to allow those ideas to flourish and get airtime is just so creative, and it stimulates those of us who may be a little more inclined to be analytical than creative, and I think that's a great thing too.
Tony, we have just 2 more minutes. So when will we meet next time in sort of in real life? Do you think that we will get together again on a global basis?
Absolutely. So FIDIC will definitely have its conference in Geneva next year, and we're headed down that path for sure. But then hopefully the FIDIC board will be able to get together some months and months before that. But I do think this has been a very tough phase in our lives and many people's lives, and we will get through this, and we'll get to a much better place on the other side, as humanity has always done. So hopefully it'll be sooner than later.
And as a final question, what's on your mind for the coming half year for FIDIC? What would you like to focus most on? Just a quick answer now.
Quick answer is we have started a huge number of new initiatives and consolidating those in the next 6 months, whether it be credentialing or the FIDIC Academy or the climate change piece, consolidating those is our focus.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony, for spending this time with us. I know it's late in the evening for you, but interesting and I think rewarding for the people in Sweden to hear the global perspectives of our industry and how we can contribute to that. So thank you so much. Och jag kommer att ta de sista orden här bara på svenska. Vi kommer att ha ett samtal igen i november förstås, och då kommer vi prata med Therese Svanström som är ordförande på TCO. Vi får återkomma med datumet, hoppas på det. Och sen har vi ett litet arkitektfokus med vår danska kollega Lene Espersen som jag ska prata med i december, så att hoppas att ni har lust att vara med och lyssna då. Stort tack för att ni var med idag och lyssnade, och tack till Tony, och så ses vi som snart igen. Tack så mycket.